Boom.
Good deal. Welcome, everybody. My name is Stuart Shevchenko. I'm an associate professional clinical counselor, state of California. I am actually the supervisor of the transition age youth team with Kern BHRS. So if you've been a part of the TAY team at all, that is my crew. I've been asked to come here to speak about relationships. Yay. I recognize this can be a very hot button kind of topic and conversation, but it's also, I find it to be very relevant and can be very fun. A little bit about myself and just maybe kind of what to expect as we talk about this. I specifically have in my conversation and my information to you guys today regarding intimate relationships. The reality is relationships take all shapes, forms, sizes. Oh, I know this guy. But otherwise, what I'm going to ask that we do, or if you guys want to participate, I'm going to talk for maybe a good 20-ish minutes or so, maybe 30 minutes. We'll see. I'm going to maybe set a timer. But then I do really want this to be a open conversation. If you guys have questions, things that you want to know about, ask about in terms of relationships and what it means to have a healthy and successful relationship, or if you're struggling in any way, you let me know. A couple things to keep in mind. Although I am a therapist, this isn't group therapy, so I'm really not here to provide any like direct clinical interventions. I will absolutely encourage that you speak to a therapist if you have relationship struggles. See about couples counseling. I find it to be incredibly beneficial. But what makes this kind of interesting for me today as a therapist, it's actually not my job to give advice. But today I'm going to give a lot of advice. And so this is going to be a little bit out of my norm and my regular talking. But I don't know, would it be helpful for you guys to do introductions? Does everybody know each other at some level?
I just know him.
Okay. I don't know. I don't know if we normally do introductions in these.
It'd be fun.
I know you, Ignacio.
Oh, Stuart, what the heck? Yeah. How you doing?
Good. Glad you made it.
Yeah, thank you. I'm sorry. I had a really long day today.
That's okay. That's okay.
But how about whoever wants to introduce themselves can go ahead and introduce themselves. But you guys do have to be mindful it's recorded.
Okay, I'll start. My name is Ignacio Rocha. I'm 21.
Good deal.
I'm Jet. I'm 23. Yeah.
Welcome.
I'm Isaiah, I'm 24.
Awesome. Good.
I'm Rain, I'm 19.
Wonderful. Anybody else? No pressure.
We're introducing ourselves.
Oh,
I don't know.
well, I'm Maria, I'm 20.
Welcome.
I don't know if we're going like to like here or we should
I'm
go
so
around.
confused.
I'm Sammy, I'm 19.
I'm Alex and I'm 24.
Welcome. Awesome. We have a good group here. I am not in my 20s, not anymore. But I got married in my 20s. I actually got married when I was 21. I've been married for over 11 years. My wife and I have been together since we were 16. And so I don't claim to be a pro or a master necessarily of all things relationship, but I think I have a bit of a perspective on what it means to keep a relationship going. I don't know, I don't intend to necessarily open this up again as a group therapy discussion where you guys at in your own relationships. I know this is more of a life skills class, and so what I hope you'll take away is some just practical knowledge about successful relationships, how to maintain, or at least some of the essential building blocks for maintaining and forming healthy relationships, intimate relationships. I get it, sometimes not everybody's interested in having a deep personal connection with somebody like a spouse or a lifelong partner. I hope though that this information will still be relevant, at least provides you again some information, or maybe some information you can take back to other folks you know. And so I'm not going to say I have come up with all of this myself. I have certainly not. On the handout, I've indicated that a lot of this work, if you want further information, I would recommend you look up Dr. John Gottman. Dr. John Gottman is kind of the OG, the primary source of a lot of clinical conversation regarding healthy relationships. Dr. John Gottman's work, to put it in perspective, he could, and he's shown this time and time again, he can accurately tell in about 15 minutes with 90% accuracy what relationships will succeed and will not succeed.
Really?
And what it is that he's come to understand about relationships is largely what I'm going to present to you guys today. And I hope then that some of this will stick. If at any time you do have a question, though, you need me to explain something better, please let me know. But otherwise, let's get started, right? Okay, so first things first, I'm going to just start by making a general comment. Relationships are work, right? If you go into a relationship expecting it to be an easy thing necessarily, you might want to readjust your expectation. Why? Because in relationships, you bring yourself, and someone also brings themselves, and they have their own values, beliefs, expectations, thoughts, feelings, and emotions, and this is all treacherous water at times to navigate. And sometimes it can be really, really, really difficult. I will say, as a therapist, I've often framed this to the folks I've worked with that usually more than about 98% of our problems are relationally driven, right? If you think about what it is you struggle with or what it is you're going through in your life, it almost always has a social component. We are social creatures. I get it. Sometimes you guys have probably heard the terms like extrovert, introvert. There's a third type, it's also called an autrovert, right? Sometimes that's kind of the third category of the individual who's really not relationally driven, but regardless, we still find ourselves in connection with people all the time.
I think that's what I am.
Might be something to consider, right? But the reason I even bring this up is because I think we can all recognize relationships are a pretty relatively ordinary part of our existence. Whether you've had that with your friends, family perhaps, or intimate relations. It seems to be, though, that especially at your guys' age in life, from a psychological perspective, right? So in graduate school, if anybody intends to study psychology or be a therapist, you'll learn all about this. Your stages of development, right? When you're a teenager, for those of you guys who are in the 19 category, you're moving out of what we call identity versus role confusion. A large part of your development is kind of figuring out, who am I? By the time you hit your 20s, you move into what's called relationship or isolation versus intimacy, right? Relationship versus isolation. And so especially as you move into your 20s, into your 30s, it becomes really, really normal, commonplace to start thinking of your life through the lens of relationships. I do want to throw it out there just really briefly. Let me ask you guys, what do you think is necessary for a successful relationship? Communication, bingo.
That's the biggest.
Transparency, yeah.
Loyalty, honor.
Honor. No wrong answers. Trust, yeah. Effort, right.
A lot of it.
Yeah. Perfect, yeah. If we look at the handout, what I've actually put on here, certainly I didn't draw this. This is a readily available thing you can find online. The Sound Relationship House. You guys identified a lot of things. What you notice on here is the word communication is actually not on there, and yet it's kind of the subtext for everything that we're talking about. But effort, right? Commitment, trust. You'll notice in the image, these kind of hold up the house. Trust and commitment, right? And trust and commitment are built and given at different varying levels with anybody that you might have a relationship with. But if you think of it, that tends to make up the walls. But what we're going to talk about for a little bit here is specifically the ground floor, the base. You don't have a house if there's no floor, right? And so what I'd like to do is maybe kind of go through from top to bottom, from bottom to top as we work through this. We're going to spend actually a great deal of time talking about managing conflict, but I want to touch on just kind of these essentials, all right? Okay. So what is the foundation of a successful relationship? In terms of your relations to one another and intimate relations, we're going to use this language because this is kind of how it's written. And forgive me, I recognize that this can be uncomfortable, but use whatever language in your mind that you think is best. But we talk about building love maps, connections. Okay, what do you guys think that means? To have a map of what somebody is about, right?
Understanding.
Yeah. So this is the foundation, right? In any intimate, close relationship, if you have a significant other, it's like, could you say, well, these are their hopes, dreams, and fears. These are the things that they're excited about. These are the things that make them less enthusiastic about life. This is just generally how they operate, right, is foundational. It's almost fairly straightforward too, right? If you're going to have a relationship with somebody, you have to have in your mind a sense of what are they all about as a person. What I'm also going to tell you though is this process of understanding how you map them out in your head is always changing and growing. I didn't come today to talk about the 5 love languages. I don't find that necessarily to be intensely relevant, especially with what I have to talk about. We can certainly talk about it at the end, but that is a whole other kind of commentary of discussion. But insofar as we're talking about what is the foundation, okay, if you want a successful relationship with anybody, well, you got to know them, right? It's just kind of straightforward. Again, I've known my wife since we were 16. I can tell you firsthand, these are the things that are important to her. This is generally how she thinks. I can almost always predict how she's going to respond to things, and vice versa, right? But that's going back to what I said in the very beginning. Relationships are work. That wasn't built immediately or over just over one night. That has taken years, and
It's a process.
it is a process, and it's always growing. Part of the relationship journey is that continual curiosity that you might have about somebody. Again, I'm just going to give kind of a blanket comment on this, and we're going to talk largely again about managing the conflicts, because that seems to be, you might have a relationship right now where it's like, man, I really love to get to know them, but it's like, boom, immediately we're already fighting. What happened, right? And oftentimes that's what gets things stunted and held up rather quickly, and where relationships tend to struggle most, right? But what are some of the other foundational things, right? Sharing fondness and admiration. If you want a healthy and successful relationship, regularly expressing appreciation and respect is a necessary and vital part, right? If you have a significant other, please and thank you goes a long way. But also simply noticing, I really love you because of X, Y, and Z thing. This is what you do super well. You notice their strengths. I can't imagine being in a relationship where you never once said something that you really liked about the other person, right? I don't know how you feel about that, but it's interesting, believe it or not. There are a lot of relationships that doesn't happen. It's like, we're just together because we're together.
And that's a lustful relationship.
Mm-hmm. Well, or sometimes it's just kind of like, it just felt right? And maybe it's fun, but is it lasting, right? You can certainly build relationships that are flings, that are fun for a time being. I'm not here to judge or tell you what to do, but insofar as we're talking about relationships that are successful in the long run, again, this is kind of what it is we want to consider, right? Not only understanding each other's love maps, we also want to understand that expressing our fondness and admiration goes a long way. Number 3, we want to always learn to turn towards instead of away. Acknowledging bids. It's interesting because that is kind of a clinical term now, but I always understood it as like a slang term, right? Do you guys understand what that means if somebody puts out a bid?
A bid?
Mm-hmm. In
Like
relation?
gambling?
No, in relationships, right?
You said a bib?
A bid.
Oh, a bid. I thought you said a bib, like a...
Right. Sometimes it's as simple as like, you might, I don't know, there might be somebody that is interested in you, and maybe you've never really thought of them that way, but then they present to you, hey, well, what do you think about X, Y, and Z thing? And it might be more of a personal comment. You call it a bid. Why? Because that is actually an expression of, hey, I'd like you to get to know me, right? My son, I have 3 kids. My oldest son, he's only 8, but he has already asked the question, Mom, Dad, what is a date? You know, he was like, he heard something on TV, and I like actually the way my wife summarized it, because I think it's the most basic thing. A date is nothing more than you simply asking to get to know somebody. It's a legit bid, right? Hey, can I take you out?
That's
right?
a good summary.
Yeah, it's nothing more than that. And so again, I'm not telling you how to date. I'm not a coach. What is that movie, Hitch, right? Isn't that what Will Smith? That what it's all about. I claim no skills in
To
that.
be honest, our generation needs it more than anybody, though.
Okay. Right.
I see a lot of lustful people going around, just like even my parents, they were only together to lust off each other.
Sure.
And that's why we've all been in foster care, because that's how our parents were.
Sure. I think the heart of this specific foundational component of a healthy relationship, turning towards in relationships, I don't know your guys' status on your personal relationships at all, but we talk about in therapy, there are usually 2 dynamics. You have a withdrawer and a pursuer. Generally, when there's conflict, one person tends to run away, the other person is chasing them, right? This is the antithesis, the opposite of turning towards each other. And it's hard, right? The things that make it sometimes difficult to connect to one another is our own personal feelings, our own morals, our sense of ourself. These are the things, right? But all we can understand is that if we're going to be successful, we have to at some level recognize we need to turn towards each other. Again, we're going to talk about managing some of the conflicts because that's just where turning towards each other oftentimes gets hard, and maybe I can help explain why. But lastly, kind of as a foundational component, is holding a positive perspective. Clinically, we would say, or even the Gottman language, positive sentiment override. What does that mean? It means giving the benefit of the doubt. If you want a healthy relationship with somebody to last, give them the benefit of the doubt, right? Does everybody understand what that means?
Yeah.
It means essentially, in good faith, whatever they were trying to do, they were trying to do it for you because they believed in you or they thought it would be good for you guys. And the moment sometimes we start falling into the, you don't want to see me succeed or you don't want me to have a great life, and we tend to fall off the track of usually a healthy relationship. Mm-hmm. All right, so all of this, again, as we're kind of moving up the house here, this culminates into managing conflict. A little bit just general research. Gottman found that 69% of relationship problems are perpetual, right? The things that you deal with your significant other, why it bothers you, well, they don't go away, right? This is what research has shown. Well, and usually, why is that the case? Because generally speaking, conflict in relationships is usually not based on brick and mortar things as much as it is on personality. Sometimes we expect other people to radically change when you get into a relationship. That's not exactly
the key,
nor is it usually a healthy expectation. Kind of using some of his language. Instead, relationship masters learn to manage their issues with humor and affection. Disaster tends to result when we try to fix problems, which can lead to gridlock, right? It becomes more of a contest. But this is really the heart of how to have and form healthy relationships or see relationships succeed. The secret to success in relationships is not about how much you love another person, it's how you manage conflicts, right? Relationships that last are relationships that learn to go through the difficult times together. That's not always easy, right? Relationships, I would argue, they will give you a very, very clear mirror of yourself. When you have, let's say, lived with somebody a long time and they know you, you may think you have things understood, you know all about yourself. Is another thing to have somebody come and tell you to your face, right? Mm-hmm. I remember when I first got to college, I was in an introduction to sociology class. My professor asked the question once, why are you in a relationship at all, right? I don't know if you've ever thought of that question for yourself, but if you think about it, and I wasn't here to overly analyze each and every one of your individual thoughts about that, but if you think about it, if you're coming to a relationship, just foundationally forming a relationship, why? I can answer for myself. I love having somebody who is in my corner at all times. I can go to, I can vent to, I can be myself with, they accept me no matter who I am. Yeah, right? Those are my answers, but that's not enough. Just because I want it doesn't make a relationship successful. I don't know if you guys being honest with yourself, right? If I want a relationship, what do I want in a relationship? What do I want out of a relationship? If you've never really given that any thought, it's a great thing for you to sit and consider.
That's true.
It's also a great thing to consider in building relations with people. Sometimes the idea is it's like you might have a close friend you never thought as like an intimate relation, but then as you've gotten to know each other, it just becomes more and more apparent. As we talk, oh, we share a lot of the same things. I can see this continuing on with them. I appreciate their support and their commitment. I can only tell you, just professionally speaking, I don't know what relationship will be successful for any one of you, like what that may look like. All I can tell you is you're responsible for you. What I want to do then, maybe just for the sake of time, again, I apologize, we're already close to 20 minutes. I want to talk about, if you guys flip over to the back page, avoiding the four horsemen. This is his language, the four horsemen of the apocalypse. That's that terminology. But essentially, that's four problematic communication styles. More than anything, what did I say before? Successful relationships are about managing conflicts. Where do conflicts tend to kind of grow from? Well, as you guys identified, communication. And how does that often
Disagreements.
say again?
Disagreements.
Disagreements, yeah. Yeah.
That's true.
Right? Are disagreements inevitable? You bet.
Mhm.
I would argue in a relationship.
You're good.
Why?
We've
Because
noticed.
Well, you're swinging back
We've
and
noticed.
yeah. When we come to any relationship, we bring ourselves, and when we bring ourselves, that comes with all the baggage, all of our hopes, dreams, and fears, and sometimes they don't always align. Again, success in relation is not about just we love each other, so we'll figure it out. It's about, hey, we have a problem. How are we going to figure this out together?
Oh, can I
Go
say
ahead.
something? Also, teaching each other.
Sure.
You know?
Yeah. Actually, I didn't talk about this, but if you guys go on the front page in the little house, I can make a quick comment about that. You're not wrong, Ignacio. Where it says managing conflicts, there's a little bullet that says accept your partner's influence. I was going to talk a little bit more about this, but for time being, I'm going to just kind of make a brief comment. When you are in a relationship, if you want to be successful, accepting the influence of somebody else is vital, right? They, generally speaking, may not always agree with you, but it's also kind of one of the great strengths of a relation, is they tell us where our blind spots are. The idea, though, is can you receive what it is that they have to say? Generally speaking, I think all of us, if somebody came to us in sincerity, in genuine love and affection and admiration and respect and hope that, or an understanding that you will succeed, whatever it is that they have to say, can usually be received well. My wife will tell me all the time, I can be too much of a stick in the mud, right? And granted, we have a long time together, and so her being kind of blunt like that is effective, but maybe not always in the beginning. That might be offensive, right, for a new relationship. And so learning to navigate, again, like I said, these are deep waters. But let's talk about some of the most problematic communication styles. Number one is criticism. One of the quickest ways to understand or realize when a relationship might start struggling, or is struggling rather, is our communication is often surrounded by criticism. What does that mean? That means attacking your partner's character rather than a specific behavior. How many times, if you're in a relationship, it's not about, hey, you forgot to take the trash out. It's more of, hey, you're lazy, right? That language is intensely problematic. Right? What does it do? Well, to build criticism, it gets you further and further away from admiration and respect.
And starts an argument.
Yeah, right? I'm going to talk a little bit in just a minute about what's called cross-complaining. That's another kind of tactic sometimes we use. But right, criticism. If you're going to be in a relationship that you want to be healthy and successful, let's avoid criticism. Sometimes we don't even know we're criticizing, and sometimes it takes the other person to call that out. And then going back to, can you accept the rebuke? Can you accept their influence? Right? It's a personal question you have to recognize in yourself. But number two, what's another problematic communication style? And this is arguably the worst. It's called contempt. It means overtly treating your partner with disrespect. Oftentimes this looks like sarcasm, eye rolling. It is, I know we're together, but I'm not going to treat you like you exist. It's devaluing the other person. Sometimes it's hard to know exactly what contempt is going to be to each one of you. As a therapist, oftentimes it's a matter of me sitting out with a couple or a young person to figure out, you really perceive this as contempt, disdain. I don't want anything to do with you. That's a really, really difficult sometimes place to come back from in a lot of ways. Again, we'll talk about the antidotes here in a minute. But number three, as well as defensiveness, making excuses or cross-complaining to avoid taking responsibility. Okay, this is oftentimes one of the most basic and first steps to unhealthy relationships, is that we're chronically defensive. I have to be on guard. In fact, I stress out. So I make excuses for my behavior, for their behavior, or whatever, but most of the time it's for our behavior. And then we get in the habit of what's called cross-complaining. Does anybody know what that might mean? Okay, cross-complaining is, let's say your significant other comes to you and they go, I'm so bothered that you never help with the kids, or I'm so bothered you never help with the household chores, whatever. And then instead of saying, you know what, you're right, I'm so sorry, I haven't held up my end of the bargain, whatever it is that you've established in a relationship, you go, well, never mind that, you never helped me with the laundry, you never helped me with my schoolwork, you never, and so what we're doing now, we're leveling complaints.
I've been through that, actually.
Right?
Do you mind if I share something?
Go ahead.
Actually, last night I had to settle something because my fiance, she thought one of my friends was like, well, her friend put it in her hand,
Mhm.
making it seem like my friend was like doing something, and so I was this morning on the way to school. I was like, so what's going on? You know, being the big friend, I was like, what's going on? And my fiance, she's getting mad because I was questioning her. She's like, oh, you picking sides. I was like, it's not about picking sides. I guess I'll always pick your side, but when it comes to opinion and facts, you know, I'm a factual person. I'm always gonna keep it real, you know.
Yeah, no, right. So sometimes we become defensive, right? Our significant other, who we kind of going back, we have a lot of trust and commitment. When they do something that kind of shakes that, it's only normal at a lot of times that we feel a little defensive, right? Because why? Sometimes we're afraid to give up the house that we built. But again, what did I say? Relationships are work. I think because you guys are all on THP Plus, none of you own a house, right? Okay, I've owned 2 houses. When you own a house as opposed to renting a house, it is a lot of responsibility. You're always needing to do some sort of level of upkeep. Well, it's true in a relationship. You may think this year, this week, this month, whatever, this season, we figured it out. And then all of a sudden, season goes by and wow, we have a new problem. I never thought of this before. This is life. That's normal. In fact, it's a pretty ordinary, healthy thing. Why? Because as we grow, remember what I said in the beginning, pursuing that love map, it's always changing. It's always growing. At one point, this was something that, you know, they thought was interesting and maybe not so much anymore. Maybe they're moving in this direction. Can you get along with that? Really quick for the sake of time, stonewalling. All right, what does this mean in terms of a problematic communication style? Remember what I said about withdrawing, the withdrawer? Well, that's essentially what this means. Withdrawing from the interaction or shutting down. This is different than self-soothing, which I'm going to talk about in just a moment. But when we are in relationships and we find ourselves just completely shutting the other person out, what are we not doing? Communicating. And if we're not communicating, we are not getting to know each other, and we're not connecting. Sometimes it's really, really hard if we're overwhelmed by what it is that the person is saying. And so I'm going to talk about an antidote for that here in just a moment, but just moving forward. All right. I have an image on here. Hopefully it makes it as simple, but just kind of reading straightforward. What are some of our fundamental antidotes for problematic communication? Number 1 is using gentle startups. For those of you who have ever been in therapy before, a relationship, maybe especially as a young person, you might have heard this expression, using I statements.
Yeah, I feel that.
Yeah. You might think this is really rudimentary and basic. It is, but it is extremely, extremely effective.
It helps a lot, especially when you can start a
Yes.
conversation with somebody. So you're like, oh, I feel that you broke this cup, but you blamed it on me when you broke it.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah, right? I statements, I feel like you're lazy is not an I statement, right? There's a difference, though. Yeah, I language is self-reflective. I feel, I need, I want. And it has to come from a level of gentle, right? I would need you to step up, right? In all sincerity, it's one of the comments in the young time in my early years of my marriage. I can remember my wife making that comment to me. And you can, in turn, respond like really defensively. But again, if you're trusting and committing that this person has your best interest in mind, you take it as it is. And we own it. I'm going to talk about that in just a minute. But using gentle startups. A gentle startup is simply as basic as, hey, I was wondering if we can talk about this. Sometimes it's an invitation. It's also a bid, right? When you get those comments from another person, if we can't seem to know how to talk about something, ask, hey, can we talk about this? And if they, let's say, get defensive or they stonewall and they don't want to talk about it, I feel like you're not hearing me. I feel like what I have to say is not important. Again, the tone of voice and the level to which we engage in this really, really matters. I'm going to, again, talk about that in a second. But what is also another one of our antidotes, especially for contempt, that's establishing a culture of appreciation. To kill contempt, you must build a long-term habit of noticing what your partner is doing right and tell them. I'm going to say as a guy, I will struggle with this all the time. I think my wife is fantastic. She does everything well. And she'll be like, well, why don't you ever say something? Right? And it's like, oh my gosh, you are 100% correct. I am so sorry. I have not I see it, I think it all the time, but maybe I haven't said it. Everybody responds differently. Every relationship is different. Some people need a lot of external validation, affirmation. That's a 5 love language comment. But fundamentally, a culture of appreciation goes a long way. Again, thank you. I notice you. I recognize how hard you're working. Sometimes appreciation, though, is always not just in our words, but it is in our deed. If you want to be successful in a relationship, showing appreciation sometimes fundamentally is doing something without being told to do something. Or when somebody's asked you in a relationship, hey, can you maybe work on this? You actually follow through with it. Hey, can you help me with X, Y, and Z chores? Then do it, right?
Honestly, I feel like females, because men, we work a 9 to 5, we get breaks, we get days to go off. But females, they do it 24/7, taking care of the babies, cleaning, doing laundry.
I can't speak to anybody but myself. You know what I know and myself to be as a guy, and so I would never generalize necessarily genders between. But what I do know is we all fundamentally have the same basic needs, right? We all still want attention. We still want affection. We want assistance. We want somebody to be there with us when we're struggling. Number 3, though, we want to be mindful always. What's an antidote for problems in communication is taking responsibility. Own your portion of any conflict. Right? I'm not here to kind of necessarily go into the weeds as I'm talking about this. Maybe you have questions, we can talk about it. But when it comes to relationships, this is often one of those things that is subtly forgotten. You may have a relationship struggle or conflict with your significant other or somebody that you're really interested in, and maybe it seems like they're the person who is messing up, right? They're the person who's going through it. But remember, relationships are a two-way street. Generally speaking, no, we cannot control anybody. No, we cannot claim responsibility necessarily for anybody's action. But sometimes stop and ask yourself, did I play a part in this? Was I maybe not available when they needed me and so they went off and did something? Was I being too distant? Was I being aggressive? And then that led them to responding to me in a certain way that I think now, right? Just own it. One of the hardest things about relationships is that relationships will cause us to be humble if you let it, right? And if you choose not to, if you continue to be you might find yourself at odds, right? Why? Because relationships, again, personalities don't change necessarily in a relationship. What is distorted is not so much the personality, it's the communication about things. It's all good. All right, but number 4, this is honestly, if there was one thing I could leave you guys with on the most practical level, if you are feeling overwhelmed, bothered, disconnected, underappreciated, misunderstood, not listened to, forgotten in a relationship, and you begin to overwork, right? You maybe feel like crying, you may feel like shutting down. Research would show taking 20 minutes to actually step away from the situation, let your heart rate slow down, relax, then engage in the conversation. One of the things I'm going to tell you is in a relationship, though, communication is key. Always talk. Always seek to understand. Kind of lastly on my little list here, Gottman, he talks about what's called the golden ratio. Let's say you're in a conflict. This is also very practical information. If you're in any sort of conflict, argument, no matter how big, no matter how small, for every one negative interaction, one negative comment, whatever the discussion may be, there should be 5 positive somethings. Sometimes that could be words, that could be a smile, that could be a touch, that could be a joke, some sort of infusion into the dialogue that has a positive spin. If you intend to see that relationship succeed. I'm going to tell you as a therapist, you always have a right to say, I don't want to do this, right? I would never tell you what to do. I would just remind you that it's your call. It is your responsibility to say, do I want to commit to this or not? And if so, again, here's some practical things. I'm going to learn to communicate more gently. I'm going to notice what they do right. I'm going to tell them. I'm also going to take some time to take responsibility, notice what I'm doing wrong, and own it. And I'm also going to regulate myself, right? Just as a side comment, Gottman often talks about, again, just some practical advice, that when you are in a non-conflict setting, when things are actually going well, there should be a 20-to-1 ratio. 20 times more than any negative time should you be discussing positive experiences, what it is they're doing well. right? And kind of break that down as for every one complaint, there should be 20 affirmations, connections. Again, I know that's kind of a lot of information, but I do really want to leave us. We got about 20 more minutes or so before I've got to get out of here. But relationships are certainly not easy, but they are fun, right? They tend to be.
When you find the right person.
Yeah, I didn't talk about this, but kind of bringing it full circle. If you guys go back to the front page, what does a successful and healthy relationship often lead to? And in one sense, it's like, why have I gotten a relationship? Because a couple things. Healthy relationships help us make our life dreams come true. They often are part of the vision we have for ourselves. And then one of the best things I would tell you as somebody who's in a relatively successful and happy, healthy marriage, is that when you are with somebody and you learn to figure it out, you create shared meaning. Right? Oftentimes, one of the greatest predictors of of healthy relationships in one sense is that the two individuals, they share a common goal. You might do two different jobs, but you still have the same goal, right? And then you find a lot of, again, connection, and the cycle repeats. As you are together and you create meaning, you're also understanding how, each of you responds to each other, what is important to you, what matters to you. And you're constantly going, right? Again, success in a relationship is not about, I just love them, it's going to all work out. No, it's not that. It's that at times things will get rough, and I'm ready to work this out with you. I'm going to take these proactive steps. I'm going to be gentle, take my time. I'm going to notice when I'm getting defensive. I'm going to own it. Anyways, that was a lot of information. Thanks for listening for about 40 minutes or so. I don't know if any of this will largely stick or is relevant, but I did want to open it up. If you guys have legit questions, what maybe do you want clarity on, or if there's anything I can address with you specifically, I'd be happy to kind of lend a perspective or a scenario.
Sorry, Jack, can I borrow Jack?
Yeah.
Sorry about that.
No. What do you guys think? Let me ask, how is this making sense? What's not making sense?
Well, it seems like money influences